Hi everyone, Fortefyre here. Welcome to the 8,000 subscriber video that I promised you all a while back. I wanted to get this done sooner, but I had this creative direction that I wanted to go with it where I could hopefully find old pictures, old videos, home videos that would kind of make this a little bit less monotonous, just because I'm going to tell you a lot about my life. But unfortunately, we were not able to recover much. For anybody who doesn't know, my dad took pictures of like everything because he was one of those guys who had a camera recorder, and we lost it all in a flood. But I was able to salvage some pictures, and I'm going to try to use those over the course of this video to the best of my ability. It's a tough video for me to make because I'm talking about a lot of hard things in life, moments in my life that I would do anything to go back and see again, but you're gonna have to figure out which ones those are by watching the video. I do want to start off by saying that we have a winner for the first ever Dagger challenge, and the community members who made videos this week were the following. Tesseract Unfolded with his new acquisition of Dangerous Dungeons, Merch Credit who loves the game Animal Crossing, Universe Expanding Books and Toys who brought themselves out of a little bit of a hiatus to talk about Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600, and the ever humorous Anthony who loves the bizarre nature of Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool for the Super Nintendo. So, who won? Everyone! This was the first time I ever did a public challenge like this, and to put your name out there and have the ambition and the courage to do something on a whim because I said to do so is powerful, and because of that, everyone who submitted a video for this challenge will be awarded one priority video of their choice. Make sure to put it down in the comment section below so I can see it. For this week, the Dagger challenge is your favorite you just had to be there moment in gaming. Good luck and have fun. Again, make sure to tag me in the description of your video or your short so that I can see it. That being said, let's get into the episode proper, and hopefully you enjoy it. Usually I start out every episode by saying, I've played a lot of games, but this time, instead of saying that, I'm gonna say I've lived a blessed life. In previous episodes, you've all been so kind to me and apparently love hearing my little stories, so hopefully you like this one. It's my way of saying thank you for helping us reach that epic 8,000 subscriber milestone a while back, because without you all, that would have never happened. And in some ways, the imposter syndrome kicks in and makes me believe that this is all a dream, that I don't deserve it. And as a community, your combined interest in talking to me and other members of the community, sharing your memories and more, that's a magical thing to me. So without any further hesitation, this is my retro gaming life. I was born in 1992 in Columbus, Georgia, but we lived in Phoenix City. I don't remember my earliest years in my life, and it's probably for the best, because my mom was with my biological dad, and he was incredibly abusive towards her. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, there's not many times in my life where I'm happy to not be able to remember something, and that's one of those moments. At some point, we moved to Louisiana, likely living with my grandmother, and then we moved back to Phoenix City, Alabama, where my mom met my stepdad and also my only true dad, James. We didn't have any game systems yet, but we did have a computer. I remember a computer, very vaguely. After a little while, my mom and dad moved to Dothan, Alabama, where my first gaming memories started to manifest. I recall my dad loving these fancy games called point and clicks, named so because he could point and he could click. And the one that he loved the most was Simon the Sorcerer. I would often sit on his lap and help offer some advice on what to do. It was also by watching him navigate what was likely Windows 95 where I learned how to use a computer. And due to that knowledge, I was able to use my grandmother's computer in Houma, Louisiana. At the time, my grandfather was a teacher. He taught at St. Francis in downtown Houma, mostly literature and history, and because he needed to grade papers, he had a Windows 95 computer as well. Two of the games that came with this strange IBM PC was MechWarrior 2 31st Century Combat as well as Torrens Passage. I was also able to nab a lot of bargain bin games from Office Depot, almost every time I went there. This was the era of 100 games in one, 1,000 games in one, 1,000 games for Windows, the best games for Windows. And most of them were just compilations of what I would call now shitty games on Windows 3.1. But oftentimes I'm curious if the developers of those games ever continued on to accomplish greater things. Might be worth looking into. In 1996, we moved from Dothan back to Phoenix City in a small apartment known as Carriage Hill. This is where my dad bought a Sega Genesis on a whim. Apparently, I was a tyrant though. One story he told me often was the morning of Christmas where the Genesis was wrapped up. I had decided to take a water gun and use the handle of said water gun to break every single ornament that I could reach. My dad was livid and started walking towards me when he hooked himself in the foot Home Alone style. Dad said he asked my mom if he could bring me back and keep the Genesis for himself, but thankfully he kept both. This was my first exposure to Sonic the Hedgehog, Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, and other games as well, but I don't really remember them clearly. We moved again soon after the lease was up because my mom and dad wanted to have a baby, so we moved to Greenleaf Apartments, and for my birthday, I was graced with a Game Boy Pocket. This thing was awesome. I could play nifty games like Game & Watch Gallery or Donkey Kong 94, or my dad's personal favorite to play on the toilet, Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle. One day he even showed up from work with Nintendo World Cup, the first game in the Kunio-kun line of games that I would ever play. He also managed to snag an NES from a flea market, and we would play Duck Hunt and Super Mario Brothers. We would drink Yoo-Hoo and 7-Up, and fuck man, we just shoot things. All I had to do was go to kindergarten and come home. I would kill to only have to do that again. My sister was born in 1998, and most of my gaming memories from when she was a baby involved going to my friend's house. Ty and Steven both had Super Nintendos, and when I would stay at their house for a sleepover, we would just play SNES games. All day. We wouldn't sleep. We would just game it out all night. And then magically it would be 10 a.m. and my dad would be there to pick me up. One time when he picked me up and brought me back to the house, he said I should check my room for something interesting. And that interesting thing was a Game Boy Color. It was purple. Oh, I could see through this thing. This was even more awesome. I actually still have it to this day. But the true magic came in Christmas of 1998. There was a long-standing tradition where on Christmas Eve we would go to my great-grandmother's house for an epic Christmas party in Gray, Louisiana, right on the outskirts of Houma. Now, my great-grandmother was Cajun and also Catholic. Those two in combination resulted in 5 boys and 3 girls, each of which had an average of 3 kids. It wasn't uncommon to see like 40 people sitting in a big loop around this long living room. Aunts, uncles, cousins. It was awesome. I loved it. But I was kind of the black sheep in the family. I didn't live in Houma, I lived in Baton Rouge, so the only gifts I tended to get were from my parent and my nanny, or in other words, my godparents. Maybe if I was lucky, I'd get a crisp $20 bill from my great-grandmother. I always kind of felt defeated, but I knew the real gifts were coming in the morning. I woke up to a treasure trove of cool things, this stupid cybernetic dog, some Game Boy games, science kits, but I saw a big box, and in that big box was a Nintendo 64. My eyes widened. This was mine. It was only mine. I didn't have to share it. I could keep it in my room. I could hook it up to my TV. This was mine. I had tons of cool games for it too, but the one that stood out was Ocarina of Time. To date, it's still my favorite game on the Nintendo 64. As time went on, my sister was given a PS1 from my cousin, but it stayed at my grandparents' house, and from 98 to 2001, every single summer, I went to my grandparents' house, and every summer I raided the aisles of Blockbuster. For those 2 months I spent with them, which felt like an eternity, I could get 2 games a pop, a week. One year though, Blockbuster had this promotional thing where you could rent up to 3 and you could swap them out at any time, and that was a great summer. If we fast forward to 2001, life is weird. The towers fell, I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm struggling to identify who I am. But more importantly, I'm really into PC gaming. Dad bought me a shitty gateway computer and it couldn't really do much, but it did enough to let me play some games like Oregon Trail, Yukon Trail, some doctor games because I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to help people, and I wanted to share gaming with the world, but I didn't know how. I was in the 5th grade and I knew that anything I did would be a drop in the ocean, but one day, I knew that I wanted to create something to help others, something to teach others, and I took that to heart. I started collecting PS1 games here and there, again mostly from flea markets, and for that Christmas I received a Game Boy Advance, but I only had 2 games for it, Namco Museum and Dragon Ball Z Goku's Legacy. I never really cared to collect for it, and I still don't tend to collect for it to this day. In 2002, we moved to what would be my forever home as a kid. It was in Old Jefferson. For any of the viewers that might be from Baton Rouge, it was right by Woodlawn High School. That Christmas was dope too because it was when I was given a PS2, and one of the games I received was DDR Max with the dance pad. Holy shit! I could play a game I was so nervous to play in the arcades. Hell yeah. Then life got stagnant. I grew up, collected PS2 games here and there, had some PS1 games. Newgrounds and albino black sheep were coming up in popularity, and this weird new website named YouTube let me see people share their daily lives. And I had the bright idea of doing my own channel, and I made one video, Then and Now, where I tried sketch comedy talking about 1942. I showed it to my dad, he hated it, and I deleted the video. So that's lost to time forever. But to be fair, I had the world at my fingertips in terms of gaming. Dad loaded up my computer with every emulator for the 3rd and 4th generation that was tangible. I spent so much of my time playing Z-SNES and Nestor, checking out these games that I never had played before, and in some cases I vaguely remembered. It was nice to connect the dots for those core memories. Nothing really changed until 2006. There were tons of consoles out, my friends had Dreamcasts, they had GameCubes, but all I cared about was the PS2 and the Nintendo 64. Then Nintendo shook the world by making us the extension of the controller. I had to have this. After all, there was going to be a new Zelda on it. Plus, I knew that my family would play with me. This was a win-win situation. And when I asked my dad, he told me no. He seemed pretty firm on it. What he didn't mention is that he was secretly going to stand in a line for 14 hours to make sure that I got it. And one day when I got home, it was on my bed. If you haven't noticed by now, Dad had a trend of surprising me in a very thankless way. Sorry, I miss him a lot. That's something that I feel he inspired me to do, and I do that for my kids too. I don't tell my kids to hold out their hands and savor the surprise and close their eyes. Instead, I put it in their bedroom, and I peek my head into a room, and I watch them enjoy games the same way that I did. They don't need me to carve their own experiences in gaming. They did fine just by themselves. I'm now in my high school years. I'm still playing my PS2 and occasionally my Wii. Life is boring, Yahoo Music is awesome, emo music is all I listen to, Blockbuster is dead, and Netflix is still sending discs to my dad's house. And speaking of my dad, he discovered the Pirate Bay, and because of that, I was always gifted games on my computer. But I didn't care, because World of Warcraft existed and that occupied all of my time. I was playing it before, during, and after school. It was an addiction, and pretty soon I entered a relationship, and that relationship transitioned into college. For my birthday, she bought me a PS3, and while the relationship didn't last, I sure as hell kept the PS3, it didn't yell at me. And now I'm an adult. I've been collecting PS2 and PS3 games at large because GameStop was selling used games. And to be honest, if a game didn't work, I didn't feel bad about it because it only cost about $5 on average. The price reflected the quality, but in many cases they did work, and that boosted my library up. In 2015, once I was assigned to Eglin Air Force Base in Fort Walton Beach, Florida for the second time, I decided to start collecting games for other consoles, building that library and ultimately building that wall. What you see behind me, obviously minus my PS2 and PS3 collection, started as 5 games. I went to Rad Junk, a store down in Fort Walton Beach, quite often, and once my re-enlistment bonus hit to the tune of $75,000, whoa, I went crazy. It really boosted up my collection. But I was collecting anything and everything. I didn't want the popular games. I wanted the games that nobody talked about. I wanted to build a foundation. I wanted to build a community. I wanted to educate, to entertain, and I knew that even though I would be a drop in the ocean, that on the smallest level, I could make someone's day a little bit better. And that's where we are today. I now own 70 consoles and countless games that I've lost track of. I stream them live and I interface with you all on a daily basis. That's it. That's my story, and I want to personally tell everyone in the community, thank you so much for being a part of this community, and I hope that you all continue to ride the lightning with me on this amazing journey. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortefyre out.